Right, ow, that was right in the balls. We're going to get ready to get some of the vehicles ready for this show that we're going to this week. Is it this week or is it? No.
Yeah, technically.
Yeah, technically.
Technically, because...
So we're going to get the vehicles ready. So, it's unlikely that we're going to get this done in a week. So, the T34 isn't going to be at the show, I'm afraid. Right, we're going to try and get this 165 Avre ready for the show. We've got a few jobs to do with it, mainly the fuel system. We've fitted a new engine in this. We haven't done anything to this for a little while, but I'm quite keen to take this to the show instead of the T34. It's had a brand new engine. It'll be a good chance to give it a good old run round, try and get into top speed, and then check to make sure we've got no oil leaks before the customer in America gets it back. So we can check any faults and fix them here, so he hasn't got to do all that finding all that stuff out when he gets it, because all tanks, they're all a bit shit and they all leak oil, no matter how good they are. So we'll make sure we've got all the bad worst leaks and make sure we've got the worst problems ironed out, because there will be problems. There's always problems. So yeah, we'll show you what we're doing and why we're doing it. Come this way. This ladder was named after Seb Belgrey. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is fitting this electric fuel pump, which is high performance fuel pump with a regulator. We're also going to have a fuel pressure gauge, so we know what fuel pressure we're running at. And obviously it's going to suck it from this tank, which is an aftermarket tank that someone else put in, we didn't, which is good, there's nothing wrong with that. But the way Centurions are designed to work, generally most Centurions, is there's a big fuel tank at the rear, and then there's two fuel tanks either side of the engine. Now that is a terrible idea, because you've got burning hot exhaust manifolds that all, when they blow, they literally flame out the side right by petrol. So a lot of people that actually run these in private hands realise that's a idea and take them out. It makes servicing the engine much easier. You can get all the spark plugs, you can see for leaks. But there's only one disadvantage with that, because obviously you fill up with fuel here at the rear, and the idea is that the rear fuel tank's higher than the lower ones, and this one will actually siphon down into the low ones. Although you can fill them there at the front just behind the turret, they do siphon together, which basically means that you have a weight of fuel which helps force it into the engine. And obviously there are two little manual lift pumps either side of the engine, which I can probably show you. And basically, and it works fine when it's how it should be. But when you're running off a tank right at the rear, and it's sucking fuel from up here, and there's no weight of fuel and there's no other tanks, these little lift pumps aren't strong enough to bring the fuel down the fuel line to the engine. Well, basically up the tank, down the fuel. They're pathetic. So, with the help of electrical power, that will make this engine have full fuel pressure, no matter what gradient or what's happening or how much fuel's in the tank. It'll have just as much fuel pressure till it runs out. So you'll always have the power, because what you'll find is if they don't quite have enough fuel pressure, when you go to set off, they'll cough, splutter and fart, and that's usually just down to just low fuel pressure. So we're also going to put a screw off the shelf fuel filter housing on it, just so it's easy to change, so you can service it a lot easier. We're going to mount that to the firewall along with the pump, just for make it easy to service really. Just screw that off. They're only a couple of quid for a new one, and you're up and running again. So we're going to have a new fuel filter, new pump, regulator, and we'll mount the tap. Now, the gauge rather, I would have ran the gauge all the way to the front if it was electrical. But it's sort of unnecessary really. Once I've set the regulator, I don't really need to be looking at the fuel pressure gauge. So we'll just mount that inside the fighting compartment, because obviously fuel pressure will be going to that, and really I don't want too much fuel inside the fighting compartment, so I'll probably mount that gauge so it goes through the firewall like that. So there's literally no fuel inside the bit where the people are. Because Centurions are notorious for catching fire. And I don't want to be in there, or I don't want anyone to be in there if it does catch fire. So that's why we're doing this, trying to make it safe. Not a fan of gasless MIG, but the big welder's far too awkward to lift up here on top of this, so we're only stacking nuts on. Right, so that's going to hold the fuel filter bowl, in theory. The next thing we're going to mount will be the fuel pump. German. It's a German tractor filter. Don't let anyone know. Oh, yeah, look at that. Right, so that's all bolted on. You could literally toe off that, so that's mint. Right, so we've just tacked those to the side of the hull, and that's where the pump's going to be mounted, and that looks like it'll fit all right. So let's weld it on a bit more properly. Right, well, Seb's going to remove all the old donkey engine fan cowling, and then obviously that's the kidney plate that we're going to bolt back on. And we're going to try and make it so the fuel pressure and the oil pressure gauge are mounted the other side of it, so you can look in here and you can see your oil and fuel pressure. So we're going to make some blanking plates for those bits when he's took them off. Look like I'm planning on sinking it. That's us done in here as far as things go. There we go. Cool, right, food. Right, so far the Holly pump's all mounted up, fuel filters mounted up, pipe to the tank, and the gauges through the kidney plate. All we need to do is wire the pump up to the battery, and then we can try it. That's the kidney plate from this side, got the gauges, and obviously the blanking plate where the donkey engine fan used to come through and the fuel changeover valve. Now what's all left to do is fit the starter motor cover, and then she's about there. I'll put a sign that says engine oil pressure and fuel pressure so you know what you're looking at. Yes, it's coming along well. So what I'm going to do now is just solder the wires from the pump for the electrics to our feed, and then we'll just neatly cable tie everything. Some of these pipes, like I say, I'm going to change, but we're going to wire this up, do a test. We're going to run the pump up without the engine, check for any leaks. We're going to need someone that does have a sense of smell, which isn't me, to smell for fuel. And then as long as we've got no fuel leaks and the gauge is running, we set the reg 7 psi for fuel pressure. We should grab the crank and see what happens. How good they are, because there's a bit of solder inside the heat shrink there, so you can literally join your wires in like that, and it literally solders them and heat shrinks them all in one go. eBay for a box of these, about £1. Worth getting if you do any sort of wiring. So down here, just checking for all leaks. Absolutely nothing so far. Checking for the fuel, building up. Also checking off the manual fuel pump as well. Again, I've got nothing. So far, so good.
unfortunately I didn't study it hard enough, but I bought the wrong gauge for the fuel pressure. It reads to 60 bar, and I actually only need it to read to 20 psi, so that's going to need changing.
Was it finished? Let's see if it starts back up. Right, now let's make sure we've had no leaks. Right, so that was a good success. The fuel in the tank isn't the best. We've had a look in it and it smells stale and it's blinding everyone. So I think a lot of the poor running is perhaps actually down to stale fuel. I mean, I've got no sense of smell, but everyone's whinging and complaining that it stinks of old fuel. So we'll probably suck that out. Actually, it's a Centurion, it's pointless. We shall burn that at the weekend when we take it to the show, put some fresh through it, and hopefully the running will improve, so it'll be less spluttery and it'll build up quicker. The only other thing we need to do before it goes off to the show that's important is nothing's holding this fuel tank in other than these crappy little straps that someone's put in. That ain't good enough. And there's no seal here. And this is part of the reason why this engine failed in this tank in the first place. Is whoever put this together, there was never a cover here to seal the radiator from the back wall. So basically, what the fans are doing is sucking air, well, it's supposed to be sucking air through the rads. Sorry, which way do they suck? They're supposed to be sucking air through here, because we're going to put louvers on, let's get this right, which is why we put all those plates in the front. So it'll suck air through the louvers, then under this bar are two great big fans, and then the idea is it blows the air through the radiators. But air's going to take the easiest way out, which in this case is this massive gap here that you can practically get under. So the air isn't being forced through the radiators, so that wants a bolt in it. Which is why this thing failed in the first place. Well, with the original engine, it failed down to heat. So we don't want to make the same mistake as the last people. So I'll make a bracket off here. Because it's the wrong fuel tank, it's got, you know, obviously whoever put that fuel tank in has got rid of the original seal. And the seal is really important on these. Because once you've got a Cent engine too hot, they're very easy to damage. So we've just ran that up for probably 5 minutes, have we? It's warm, the water's warm, but it's not boiling. But if you can imagine, when she's under load, she gets hot very, very quick. And obviously, it's not going to be pushing the air through the rads, cooling it, it's just going to be blowing it up the back there. So we'll make a bar which not only holds the fuel tank in a bit better, we'll have a rubber strip over the top, so when you lift the rads, there's like a rubber seal, and it'll obviously, we'll fill that void in as well with rubber, so it actually makes a proper seal, and that should cure the cooling issues with it. And then, to be fair, it's just decks on. I'm not going to put the decks on at the show, mainly so people can have an actual look when we park up and see the engine. Obviously the engine's dusty because it's been in the shed for weeks now. We'll give the engine a good clean off before we take it to the show. We can run it round, check for leaks, and at the show you see we can pull the radiators up so people can see the engine gearbox all looking really nice. And hopefully staying looking really nice if we don't have any oil leaks. And hopefully the poor running will improve as we burn that horrible, I can't remember how long since this vehicle's been to a show, but I'm thinking it's about 7 years. So that fuel is pretty old. So yeah, hopefully it'll be good. So
I mean, it is a Cent, so that will last
20 minutes. It's up to here. No, it's probably less there. Probably about there. That'll probably last it 40 minutes. Probably less if I'm really going to town. I'm going to go as fast as we possibly can with this thing. So yeah, join us again. Hopefully at the show. We'll be taking this. We'll be taking the Bath. We'll be taking Mad Max. We'll be taking the FV43230, whatever the hell it's called. Probably Saracen and a load of other bits. So see you at Operation Market Harbour this weekend. coming. Oh, and the Berlin chieftain of Sebs.
Can you just make it like so you look unhappy, please? That's the stuff of nightmare.